Okay, so here's a part that I'm going to go ahead and do the on-machine probing on. So basically I'm going to give you an overview of kind of how to go ahead and do this in NX. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get a tool. So I'll go ahead and click on Create Tool. And what I'll do is I want to retrieve an existing tool from the library. So I'm going to click on that button there. And from this list here, I don't see probe, but if I click on the plus sign next to solid, I'll see a probe underneath it. So I'll select that, say OK. I want to search for an inch probe. So I've got that selected, say OK, and it came up with a probe here. So I'll select that one, say OK, and it went ahead and created it in Pocket 2 for us. So that's great. And you can go ahead and see a preview of what it looks like. So it's just a cylinder, another cylinder, and a circular sphere at the end. Okay, so that's what our probe looks like. Okay, and it's in Pocket 2. So the next thing that I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and create an operation. Okay, so what I have here so far is I have a roughing cavity mill pass and a finishing cavity mill pass. So we just have this rough and finish pass for this step and this hole here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert an operation. So after the finish pass, I'm going to insert an operation to go ahead and probe here. So I'll insert an operation, and the type I'm going to have set to probing. And what you can see here, there's 5 different subtypes. The first one we have is mill part probing. The second one is for turn part probing. This is for mill tool setting, for mill tool probing, so to automatically measure your milling tool. This is for automatically measuring your turning tool. And this is just generic motion, so you can just make anything move anywhere you want it to. So we've got these 5 subtypes under probing. And I'm going to go ahead and select the tool that we selected from our library. The geometry I'm going to use is workpiece. And the method, I'm just going to go ahead and leave that as method there. Okay, so what you'll see is in this operation, just like in other milling operations, is we have geometry, we have a tool, we have our program, we have all these parent groups, and the thing that's different in here is we have these sub operations that we go ahead and add. Okay, and then we also have the thing that's different is these path settings. So I'm going to go into this probing operation, and I'm kind of just investigating what's in here. And the first thing I'm going to see is I've got these probing parameters here. Okay, so these are different settings that you can go ahead and set for your probing. So I can go ahead and set my approach type, as a clearance move, departure type is clearance. So I can go ahead and set all this stuff. And I'll go ahead and do that. So my approach and departure move is clearance. And I'll just go ahead and say OK. Okay, so now that we have that set, we'll go ahead and take a real quick look at our MCS mill. And we have these the clearance plane, so that's one thing, one type of geometry that can get inherited. So that's just one thing to consider when you're working with this. So I'm going to go back into the operation, and the thing that's different is that we have these sub operations. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new sub operation. And so you'll see this list of different things. So I'm just going to read these out to you. So we have calibrate length. This is for calibrating the length of your tool. This is for calibrating your stylus. So this would be, measuring your stylus and where the position is off center. This is calibrating on a sphere. Okay, so this would be, maybe for a 3D probe. So for calibrating on a sphere, it gives you different offsets depending on what vector you're probing from. This is probe points, so just probing a point and you give it a vector direction. You have probe a surface point, so you can specify a surface and a point, and so the surface will give you the vector and the point will give you the measuring point that you want. This is probing a cylinder, so basically we'll take a look at that. I select a cylinder and it'll apply the Renishaw probing macro for measuring a cylinder there. We have this for a clearance plane. We have a linear move to a point, a linear move along a vector, a linear move along tool axis, linear move normal to tool axis, etc. Okay, and one of the ones that I'm going to be using is this linear move to MCS position. Okay, and the other one I'm going to use is machine control, because I'm going to have to use this machine control to kind of tell it what to do with these probing points. So I'm going to have to tell the machine is once I've measured this point, go ahead and put it somewhere on the control. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a linear move to an MCS position. I have my MCS set to this bottom left-hand corner here. I'm going to say, okay, go ahead and start out in the Z 5 inches off the top there. So that's where we're going to start out. So you can see in the sub operations, I have that first move, and if I see in the graphics window, the probe is 5 inches above here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new sub operation, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a linear move to a point. Okay, I'm going to have protected move selected, and then I've gone ahead and created some points beforehand where I want it to kind of move around. Okay. And one thing that's kind of unique about this is, yeah, you have to go ahead and create, some points up front, but this is like if you use the Renishaw probing macros anyways, which that's what most people are familiar with probing is the, 9810, 9811 stuff, that you have to enter these points manually anyways. And so NXCam is making it so it's easier for you to go ahead and input these points. And using, the Renishaw probing macros makes it so you can understand the code, and you can easily, create probing operations across different controls and platforms. Okay, so I did a linear move to that point. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and probe on a surface point. So I am going to find my surface point, probe a surface point, and I'm going to select my point, and I've got a point that's already there if you can see it, and I'm going to specify my vector. Okay, and right now the vector, it's the approach vector, and so it's going the wrong way, if you can kind of see that. So it's going in minus x. So I want it to approach it in positive x, so I can just go ahead and toggle that. And I'll say OK. Okay, so now I can go ahead and, single step through this of what I have so far. So I go ahead, in rapid, to the start point, and then the next thing I'm going to do is I do a protected positioning move, and what the protective positioning move is go ahead and move at a feed rate, but if the probe gets triggered, go ahead and stop. Okay, and then the next thing is just that I'm just probing, on the side. So now from this point, what I'm going to want to go ahead and do is retract out off the side here. So what I can do is create a new operation, and I'll do a linear move to a point. I'll have it go back out. Okay. Okay, and now what we want to do, and it looks like I kind of deleted my point, but that's okay, is position it over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move one of my points. So I'm going to right click one of my points here, and I think I have to be in modeling mode here. So I'm going to move my object. I'm going to create a copy, and then I'm just going to move it like over here somewhere. So that works. Maybe 2.5. Maybe I was thinking, and that's a nice square number. So I've got that. So now I have that point that I didn't have. And now if I go back into manufacturing, go back into my probing here, we can see where I left off at. So we have a linear move over here. Now I'm going to do a linear move over to that point that I just created. So I'm going to go ahead and create a linear move here. Okay. And then I think I'm going to need another one. So I'll say here. So I have one there. Okay, so now what I need to do is I want to do a probe a surface point. So I can say here, and my vector, specify it. Looks like it's backwards, so I want it to approach in positive y. Okay, so let's see what we've got here. Okay, so now I need to, from that point, I need to go ahead and back off. So then I'm just going to do linear move to a point, go here, okay. Hopefully I've got another point here. Yeah, it looks like I've got another point, so go back in. I'm going to do another linear move to a point. Okay, so what I'm doing here is, I'm creating these points, and it's like, okay, well, so far we've created a probing point here. I've created like a probing point here, so it's actually touched the surface here. And so what does it do with this data? Well, right now it hasn't done anything with it. Okay, so the problem that I need to make sure that I deal with is I need to make sure that on the controller that it knows what to do with that point. Okay, so on your machine, say for example you have like this FANUC machine. We've got variable 142 that goes ahead and tells the position of the probe when it's triggered. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I've created 2 points, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to go ahead and record that information on the controller in a structured manner. So you can have like a variable 101, which is the first point, 102 the second point, 103 the third point, whatever, however you want to do it. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, and I can do this in any order that I want, but I'll just go ahead and say machine control event. And so I'll click on insert, I'll add a new event, and I'll type in pound 01, oops. Okay, so that's for my first point. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and say okay. And so now I should see something that looks like a machine control event that's floating around in there. So, and maybe I should have done this in order, but I can go ahead and, you know, drag these, so, or cut them and paste them. So I can click on this one, and that looks like a cut symbol, cut. And so now I'm going to look for my first probe point here, and I can go ahead and paste it. Okay, so after it's probed the point, it's got the information in variable 142 of where the probing point is. And so what I'm doing is I'm just copying that information to pound 101. That's what I did in the last example here. And so what I'll go ahead and do is I'll create another event, a machine control event, and it was insert. And so this next one, so now after it's probed, you know, this next point here, it's going to go ahead and record this variable. So I'll say okay. Okay. And now it looks like it's kind of just floating in there, so I'm going to cut it and paste it to this probe service point here. Okay, so now we have that information here. I'm going to say okay, and I'm going to go ahead and save this because I'm partially happy with what I'm doing here. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to quickly go ahead and probe this cylinder, and then we'll go ahead and be done. I kind of just wanted to get you guys a taste, you know, for probing, and I think after I show you this cylinder, I'll go ahead and show you how to modify the post, and you guys should be cooking with gas. So next thing I'm going to position above the cylinder. So I'll go ahead and insert a new operation. And the one that I want is linear move to a point. And by default, protective move is set. So anytime, you know, you're positioning the probe or close to the part, protective move is probably good. Like in a past life, I have, you know, forged a probe, so probably want to be careful when you're close to the part here. So I've got to move to this point. Now I'm going to probe my cylinder. So I've probed a cylinder. I'm going to just select my cylinder, say OK. And now we have that. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to retract out of there, go linear move to a point, make it so it's safe. So I have it there. So I've got that. And I don't like where it is in my list, so I'm going to move it. This is the last one here. Okay, and so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to have it go to my probing home, or where I start probing. So I'll say OK. Okay, so let's go ahead and see, what this looks like. Okay, so these are moves here for us. So rewind it. So it does a positioning move here, probes on the side, positions over here in Y, positions in X, probes in Z, probes up, positions in Y. Then what it does is it's going to go ahead and call the Renishaw probing cycle. Okay, off the top of my head, I don't know what that is for a cylinder, but it does know that it's a bore. Okay, and so what you'll see is in the Renishaw output, you can do like a 3 or 4 point like bore measurement. And so depending on how it's turned on in the post, and the options I selected will depend on what it outputs there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to retract out of that bore and then go back home. Okay, so easy enough. Okay, so now that I've gone ahead and created this operation, we're good to go. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to show you really quick is how to modify your post. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Okay, one of the things that we have to do in order to get on-machine probing working on our machine is that we need to make sure it's implemented in the post. So what I have opened is Post Builder, and I've got Post Builder 9 open here. And so I am going to modify a post so it's got the probing cycles in it. So all I need to do is go ahead and open my existing post, and for here I'm going to use this mill 3-ax that's just in the default mock resource post processor folder. Then I click on NC data definitions. I click on other data elements. Then I'm going to click on inherit UDE from a post. Then I'm going to right click in some empty information here, empty space. Click on new. And now I'm going to find a post that I'm going to go ahead and inherit here. So I'm going to click on select post. And so I went ahead and installed NX9 along this path. Those C, apps, Siemens. I went ahead and created these folders here. But what you'll see as you navigate through the folder structure, you'll see mock, resource, and then this post processor folder. This is where out of the box post processors are for NX. And if I go ahead and scroll down here towards the bottom, there should be something that says probing cycles. And so right here I can see I've got probing cycles for FANUC and probing cycles for Siemens. So I'm going to select probing cycles for FANUC, say open, and it's going to give me a warning message here. I'll just say OK, and I'll say OK. And now I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I'm going to say swoosh test. Okay, so I've got that saved. So it should be good to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and close it. Now we've added the probing cycles to our mill 3-ax post. Okay, so now that we've modified our posts, we can go ahead and see the post output using the probing cycles. So I'm going to go ahead and post process. I've got this this post. I think I called it new post. I'll just say okay. Okay, and I've got my milling stuff there up top. And if I scroll down, it looks like I have these macro commands, the G65, P9810, and 9814. And this 9814 is for probing the bore. I've got a diameter of 2.5 inches. That's what I went ahead and modeled this bore as. So it looks like, you know,